Molweni manene na manene kazi namkele kile kubo yam ndinombuzo omnye qha. Uzolani Tete esimazio uzokubuya e-UK ngomgqibelo na. We've got one burning question here in South Africa. Will Zolani Tete, the Zolani Tete we know is a devastating two-weight world champion, will he return to form like we know him Saturday night in the UK when he takes on Jason the Iceman Cunningham for Cunningham's Commonwealth as well as IBF international titles in the junior featherweight or super bantamweight division? Now, there's a saying, if ifs and buts were chocolates and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. And this fight is kind of like that. Lots of ifs and buts, and those ifs and buts are all on the side of Zolani Tete. Now, another veteran star of us, Heki Butler, proved that he's far from done and he's still a major force on the world scene with his brilliant victory over Alvin Soto in Mexico last weekend. And this weekend, it's a time for Zolani Tete to prove to us, has he still got it to get another world title? Now, there's where the ifs and buts come in. Now, Jason Cunningham has got a record of 31-6 with 7 knockouts. So he's not a big puncher, but he's been on a roll as of late. He hasn't lost in a long time, and he's scored victories over opponents that he were not favoured to beat. And he's been tested in those victories. It didn't look in some of those fights that he was going to win, but he grinded it out. He's tall, he's rangy, he's also a southpaw like Zolani Tete. Now, Zolani is moving up to the junior featherweight division. But there's firstly the question of inactivity. He took a devastating loss against John Real Casimiro in 2019 when he was relieved of his WBO bantamweight world title. And since then, he's only had a warm-up fight against a very so-so opponent that really didn't belong in the ring with him, and he knocked that opponent out within a round. So there's that inactivity, the lack of ring time on Zolani Tete. That's the one if. Then there is the but. But will his shoulder be okay? He's long struggled with a right shoulder injury, and Tete, who is also a southpaw, he starts everything from his right jab. Everything works from the right stick, and he is a range fighter. He's a rangy boxer puncher, and he's a good counter puncher, but he's not a guy who can grind in your chest. His weaknesses, he doesn't got the greatest chin, and he doesn't do well when he's put under pressure, like we saw against Casimiro, like we saw way back many years ago against Moruti Mtalane. If you can get past that long range, if you cannot get caught with one of those counter punches, because Tete can punch, just ask Paul Butler, who he took out with a shot was straight out of hell. Tete can punch and he can down you on those counters. But if you can stay in his chest, make him move backward, if you can get past those things and put him under pressure, you've got a good chance to beat Zolani Tete. If you're going to stay at the end of those punches, it's going to be a very long night for you. Now, that shoulder injury, whether it's healed or not, that will be pivotal to Zolani Tete's success. If I look at Jason Cunningham, he's a good fighter, he's a solid fighter. I don't think he's a really special fighter. He's definitely on European level. He's probably sort of fringe world-class level, good enough to challenge for a world title, certainly if he wins on Saturday. But I can't see him beating somebody like Murajan Akhmadaliev or Stephen Fulton, who are the big names in that division at the moment. But nevertheless, Jason Cunningham is somebody that he can box a little bit at range. He can come forward a bit. He can use angles a little bit. What I think is on the downside of Jason Cunningham, he hasn't really got big power. Only 7 knockouts in a large number of fights, and he does get caught. He's very uncomfortable up close when somebody puts him under pressure. Somewhat the same as Zolani Tete, but he does get caught, and he gets caught at mid-range as well. He boxes well, he gets out of range, but he's not quite quick enough, and he's not quite sharp enough to do it effectively over 12 rounds. He is going to get caught in between, and I think there is the opportunity for Zolani Tete. Now, Zolani is a very tall bantamweight. He's 5'9". I have to wonder how much the weight affected him at bantamweight. Was he killing himself to get into the weight? Because he is a really rangy bantamweight. He looks me in the eye when I stand next to him. So that's a big bantamweight. So I think maybe he's better suited to the junior featherweights. Maybe his punch resistance might be a bit better, maybe not. And will he carry his power up to the junior featherweights? That's the other question. Now, I think if he nails Jason Cunningham on the button, Cunningham has been stopped once, and that was by Sam Eggington, and that was, I believe, as a featherweight in the higher weight division. So he's used to fighting in higher weights than Zolani does. So he can be stopped, but will Zolani carry enough power to do that? That is a big question. Now, a lot of it hinges on that shoulder injury of Tete. He's a guy that works on his jab and he works from range. If he hasn't got his lead hand, everything sort of falls apart. He's not a guy who's a one-handed fighter who can just go into the trenches when that doesn't work and just brawl and maul his way through. That's not his style. So that shoulder is going to have to be, I think, at the very least 80% of what it used to be in order to beat Jason Cunningham. That's a big cloud hanging over the fight. The inactivity is neither here nor there. It depends on what sparring he had in East London. I'm not sure. And also we saw Hickey Butler could overcome that, and maybe Zolani can as well. Maybe that inactivity helped the shoulder to heal somewhat. But that is a big if. Jason Cunningham is too good for Zolani to beat him with one hand. That is not going to happen unless that one hand is his lead hand. And that is a big question. Now, if his lead hand, if his jab hand is healthy, or very close to healthy, and he can use his jab effectively through the fight to set up his counters, I think Zolani should be able to beat Jason Cunningham, because as I've said, Cunningham gets caught. He's not a big puncher. He's not explosive like Casimiro. He doesn't have the power of Casimiro, but he is like Casimiro, very awkward. So he's a southpaw. Zolani's a southpaw. Zolani's fought southpaws before. Omar Narvaez, Mikhail Aloyan, Sibonis Ogonia, especially Aloyan and Narvaez was seasoned southpaws. Aloyan with an amateur record. And so Zolani is not going to have a trouble with Jason Cunningham being a southpaw. He's going to handle that. I think he's going to handle it easier than Cunningham is going to handle it. Cunningham will be the stronger, tougher guy, no doubt. He's used to having heavier guys shove him around. So even though Zolani Tete is going to have a reach advantage and is going to have a height advantage, it's not going to be as big an advantage as he's used to having at bantamweight. But what I've noticed about Jason Cunningham, as I said, he does get caught, and sometimes he fights from the outside and then he throws a punch and sort of jumps into his opponent and sort of ties up and maul. And you don't want to throw a punch and just jump on Tete like that unless you can do it from those angles that can move at speed that Casimiro did it. And Cunningham hasn't got that sort of explosiveness and speed. And I think if he jumps on Tete like that, falling forward with his weight forward, he's going to get countered with an uppercut or a hook. And I think he will feel it when he does, because his weight is going forward. So if I'm pushed for a prediction, it's a very difficult one, because of all these X factors, injuries, inactivities. I think Zolani has competed at the higher level. I think he's a better puncher. I think the weight, going up a little higher in weight, may suit him, may not, but I have a feeling he's been cutting off an arm and a leg to make bantamweight. He had to do it, of course, because he was part of a World Boxing Super Series until injuries scuppered that. So I'm expecting a fight that's going to be a bit untidy at times. I'm expecting maybe a bit of a chess match at times, but I do think that Cunningham is going to jump onto a counter at some point in time, and he's perhaps going to suffer a knockdown as a result of it. It could also be Cunningham is just strong and just stops Tete. So if Tete is not 100% and that shoulder is not working anymore, I think Jason Cunningham is going to win quite widely by points or even stop him late. I would not be surprised if Zolani Tete knocks out Jason Cunningham. I would not be surprised if he beats him on points. Anything can happen. But I'm here to pick a winner. I'm going to very tentatively go with Zolani Tete to score a knockdown or two, and that will make the difference in a very close fight. And I think Zolani is going to pull off a close decision. By fighting in the UK, how is he going to pull off a close one in the UK? Remember that they are both promoted by Frank Warren. Both Zolani Tete, Jason Cunningham, by Frank Warren fighters are fighting on his ball. So I think Zolani might get a fairer shake in the UK, when your runnable visiting fighter might get there. So I'm going to put my head on the block and say Zolani Tete exit out on points and remains relevant for another world title shot in the junior featherweight division. But there's a little caveat below it, a little asterisk, providing that shoulder holds up. If that doesn't hold up, it's all bets off, and I think Cunningham is going to beat him. But I'm holding thumbs that I know my friend Loiso Mcha is also there with Zolani. I'm holding my thumbs that they've got all of that under control. And we're wishing Zolani all the best for the fight. And bring it home. We're behind you, last born. And then, of course, if you guys in the Orient Theatre are very lucky, I wish I can be there. Unfortunately, travel arrangements once again has scuppered my plans. I was supposed to be somewhere else. Visas fell through, and here we sit. But I'll try and watch if I can find any place it's being shown. Enjoy your boxing in the Orient Theatre on Sunday. Irap en die Kwenalela I tournament entle. Die Kwenalela I tournament in Mpumalelo. Desi Wanane Pakamisani Zandla.